When peace like a river attendeth, what does that mean? Attendeth. Any idea? It comes my way. So when peace comes my way, like a river, or, it's missing the or when sorrows roll over me like sea billows, like waves of the sea. So either peace can come like a river rushing towards us, or maybe sorrows will come in a big wave. Whatever my lot, whatever happens to me, you have taught me to say, it's well with my soul. Then the chorus just says, it's well with my soul. The second verse says, you know the story?
Buffet.
Buffet, like, when you have a meal. Except it's not. It's spelled exactly the same as buffet, but this word is pronounced buffet. Buffet. And it means to hit somebody. Sometimes, turbulence in an airplane, we talk about the wind buffeting the plane. So it means hitting. So it's saying, even if Satan will hit me, even if God's enemy will hit me, even though trials will come, let this blessed assurance control me. Let me be in control because of this true fact that this God has given us. And here's the fact, that Christ has regarded my helpless state. Estate just means state. And has shed his own blood, has given his own blood for me. Okay? Then the third verse, by the way, though Satan should buffet, if you say it wrong, it sounds kind of strange. I always picture Satan having a delicious buffet meal, but no, it's buffet. Then the next one starts out with an even stranger line, which if you just read this line, my sin, oh the bliss of this glorious thought. And if you stop there, it's not a very good thing to say. It's so wonderful to think about the bad things I have done, but no, it's not a whole line. It's my sin, oh the, then here's the sentence. My sin, repeats my sin, is nailed to the cross. My sin is nailed to the cross. Oh, the bliss of this glorious thought is the fact that my sin is nailed to the cross. Not just a part of my sin, but all of it. All of my sin is nailed to the cross. I bear it. I'm carrying it no longer. I don't have to carry my sin. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. The next verse. Lord, haste the day. Bring the day quickly. Hasten, you know that word hasten? It's the verb that we normally use when they say haste, or make quickly, make the day come quickly, when my faith will change to sight, when I don't have to have faith, when I see you, Lord Jesus. The clouds will be rolled back like a scroll. So the clouds will be moved away, the sky will be wiped away, the trumpet will resound, right? And the Lord shall descend, and even so, even then, it will be well with my soul. Is that the last verse? Yeah, that's the last verse. Good. Okay, let's go to the material for today. And it's like, there we are. Back to school, back to work. Okay, what have we learned so far? Next page. The first day we talked about this idea of integrity. Bringing our life together so we don't have different versions of our life when people are watching and when people aren't watching, right? We need to have integrity, be one, put it all together. Then we gave some examples of that. Bad example first, of course, is Pete Rose, a guy with zero integrity. When he finally admitted that he had cheated, he sold his admission, scribbled on a baseball for $350 to anyone who would pay for it. Very little integrity. Next. These are some quotes that explain integrity. This great one from D.L. Moody that says, character is what you are in the dark. Character is not who you are when everyone's watching. It's who you are when no one is watching. And you can get away with anything. If you could be invisible, what would you do? And D.L. Moody is saying, if you have character, if you have integrity, you would behave exactly the same on your day of invisibility as you would on your day on a regular day. And that's what Leviticus 19, remember the second version of the Ten Commandments. The main one is in Exodus, but it's repeated here in Leviticus. And in amongst the big 10 commandments are things like this. Don't curse a deaf person. Don't trip a blind person. You could get away with it, but if you want to have integrity, you don't do that kind of thing. Next. 2 weeks ago, we talked about this guy, who is a leaf cutter ant. And when he's blown up to this size, he's a little bit frightening, but it's okay. Don't worry, you're safe. It's just a picture. Right? And leaf cutter ants, they work hard, right? They cut the leaves, they carry the leaves home, right? And then what do? They ferment them, they make kimchi, right? And they eat it all winter long because they're smart, hard workers. Know anyone else who makes kimchi and are smart, hard workers? That's right, Koreans as a general rule. When I tell people to work hard in Korea, I feel crazy telling them to do because you all work too hard already. Right? It's part of the biblical advice there. Next page. This is how Paul says it in Ephesians, make the most of every opportunity. God has given us this time, these opportunities to serve and to change the world for Him. Make the most of every opportunity. Last week we talked about how to be a success, and we said that what really matters in being a success is the long term, right? It's not this short term that it's here today and gone tomorrow. It's not the poor cat that got run over, rescued, feels like it's a success, run over, it's not a long-term success. If you're going to be a plant, better to be an oak tree than a pumpkin. Pumpkin pie is delicious, and it feels great when you're eating it. It's just short-term success. An oak tree you can produce, and I've forgotten the name of these, but Morris chairs. Morris chair, something that's it'll last forever. When I was thinking about it, I also forgot that my grandparents had a Morris chair. And they got it when they were first married in about 1920 something. And my sister now is using it, and it's had hundreds of people sitting on it. It's solid, and it's a long-term success. It's not like a delicious pumpkin pie. It's success, but only for a short term. What we need to struggle for is long-term success. Next. Oh, this quote from Carol Winger that says, when I say I'm a Christian, I'm not bragging of success. I'm admitting that I fail. I cannot ever pay the debt. What makes us Christian is not that we're successes, but that we know we need God to be a real success, a long-term success. Next. So we're back to school. We did cheating and talking about time and time success last week. The kids, next week, as you may recall from my announcement last week, the kids next week are having their talent party, so they don't get an extra talk. We're going to get this talk next week, and we're going to get their bullies talk, our bullies talk, this week. Okay, so we have 5 topics, they only have 4. So we're going to talk about bullies this week, and what to deal with, how to deal with them. So next page. Some of you have heard this story before. If you have, I apologize, but if you haven't, this will give you a little bit of insight into who I am. This is my hometown, Google Maps of my hometown, or Google Earth of my hometown. When I was a child, I lived in this house right here, 5003 103rd Avenue. Okay, 50th Street, 103rd Avenue. When I was 12, I guess I moved there, and so I went to middle school. There's a school somewhere along here. But this is the school I went to. That was called Hardesty Junior High School. And, well, when I went back and forth to school, I took the obvious road. Yeah, I would walk along here, and then come here, and then into my school again, right? That's just kind of a sensible way to go to school. But that's not the way I normally went to school. Here's the way I normally went to school. Was it because I had no sense of direction when I was a child? No, I had a perfectly good sense of direction. But I would, instead of going out the close end of my school, I would walk all the way through my school. My classes were just down this end usually. I'd walk all the way through the school, out, across the big main road. This is kind of a major road. There's a row of trees that I can kind of get behind and not be seen very much. And then I come on, there's another school here, we pass that. All the way here, if I went down here, I was too hidden from view, so I didn't like that. So I'd go up and walk down this road, and then across and into my parents' house. Any guesses as to why? Because if I left this way, it was fine here. There were teachers in the school ground till about here, and I could get to about here. But by the time I got around the corner, there was a bully waiting for me. And you think, oh, how could there possibly be a bully? Pastor John is a giant, right? But I wasn't, because I had skipped a grade, so I was very young when I went into 7th grade. And this guy, and I grew late. The boys in my family, I grew till I was 19 or 20. So I wasn't very big when I was only 12 years old. And the guy who was my bully, he hadn't skipped a grade, he had failed a grade. And then he had failed another grade. I'm pretty sure that he had to shave most days before he came to middle school, right? And I know that by the end of the year, he was driving. So he was 16 in middle school. So 18 in Korean age, in middle school, right? And he was just a typical bully. He would kind of walk behind me and make me frightened, and he would walk closer and closer, and eventually he'd get to the point where he'd start shoving me, and it's funny now, but it was horrible at the time, right? I was just like, and that's why I stopped walking that way. I walked all the way around. Now, it should have made me more healthy, but maybe it taught me to hate walking because I only walked when I was afraid of a bully or something. But that was my route home for a whole year. In fact, at the end of that, because I had to do this literally every day when the kid found me, and starting in September till the next June. The next year, my parents took me out of that school and sent me to a different school because I was afraid for my safety all the time. So that's where I come from when I'm talking about bullying. It's real. It's something that happened now. It's what, 15 or 20 years ago, maybe, or 50, 45, 40 years ago. Right? It was 40 years ago. But today, bullying continues, and kids and people, adults, are bullied. We have an ability now to bully people that we didn't have back then. We didn't have the ability to bully people, cyberbullying, right? And it doesn't just happen with kids, it happens with adults, it happens all the time. And it's not just pushing, shoving kind of bullying, there's also bullying where people at your work or the environment you're in demand things, and they do it because they're powerful and they can make you do what they want you to do. Bullying happens. And most of you can talk about from the perspective of what to do with bullies, but we'll get a little bit of talking about whether or not you're a bully later on. When we talk about bullying, to me there's a good example in the Bible. This guy, Goliath, right? What do you call a giant? Eden? Is it from Goliath? No. It seems like it should. And you know how to spell my name in Korean. Gone. So, 4 giants. Okay. This is Goliath. He's a bully. Let's see what the story tells us. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. 6 cubits. This is not the normal translation. I had to go to the NIV UK version to get cubits. You know how long a cubit is? Yeah. Cubit is from here to here about. And a span, any guesses on a span? This is a hand's breadth. Yeah. So span is this or sometimes this. Okay, yeah, like yours on the phone. The problem is we don't know exactly how long a cubit was. There's several different cubits floating around, and there's also a problem that some of the manuscripts don't say 6 cubits in a span, they say 4 cubits in a span. He was big, regardless. The minimum that even if you take the 4 cubits in a span and the smallest cubit, the minimum height he was is about 2.3 meters tall. So that's this. That's a big guy, right? Yeah. He had a bronze helmet on his head. What does this tell you right away? He had a bronze helmet. What age of history is this? If he had a bronze helmet. This is the Bronze Age. Yeah, and it is. David lived in the time of the Bronze Age in the Near East. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore a coat of scale armor, overlapping pieces of armor, of bronze, definitely Bronze Age, weighing 5,000 shekels. Anyone know how much a shekel weighs? About a tenth of a kilogram, a hundredth of a kilogram, 10 grams. So 5,000 shekels is 50 kilograms. 50 kilograms. With the children's class, I asked who weighs 50 kilograms, but I don't think I'll ask that here because it's people like to. So about 50 kilograms, 56 kilograms, I think they figured that was. On his legs, he wore bronze greaves, those little things to protect his legs, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. A javelin, kind of a spear, but for throwing long distance. His spear shaft, now they're talking about his spear, which he would have used for close fighting or for stabbing people. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod. I explained that it's about the size of this in diameter and long, right? And it's iron. Oh, iron. Around the time of David, the more advanced nations in that area were entering the Iron Age. The poorer nations were still Bronze Age, but other nations were becoming Iron Age, and so the Philistines had access to some iron. And the Israelites were still mostly using not even bronze. Its iron point weighed 600 shekels, about 5 kilograms, 6 kilograms. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Okay? So this is who he is. To get us some more information about who he is, let's move on. Next page. Oh, we like to have math problems sometimes. Some of them I can't do, like the one I did for integrity a couple weeks ago. But this one I can do. This is still arithmetic, so I'm good at this. This is a little math to tell us, to get an understanding of how big Goliath was. This is the minimum height. He was at least 2.3 meters tall, 230 centimeters. This height is a pretty good guess at David's height, probably about 150 centimeters. We don't know exact heights of people back then, but archaeologists tell me that if you're guessing about 150 centimeters, you're in the right range. Okay? So 230 to 150 is equal to 195 to x. What is 195? That's me. I'm about 100. X. Yeah, about 195. X is who we're looking for here. So we solve for x. X is 127 centimeters. Do you know how tall you are? About probably 140. Can you come in? Can you come just for a minute? Yeah. She's a little taller than 127. So squish down a little. Squish down. Squish. Yeah, there. This is David. This is Goliath. This is almost exactly the right ratio for David and Goliath. Thank you. Thank you, David. Okay. David was just a little tiny. Like, if we were to fight, I hope you realize that I would probably win. Right? There wouldn't really be much question about it, right? Because I'm not just taller, but huger, right? And that's the shape, the size difference that David was looking at when he was facing this huge bully. What kind of bully was Goliath? This is the stuff he said. Oh, you know the description of him with his armor and his greaves and his weaponry? The best way to understand Goliath in terms of their warfare at the time was he was like a tank. The rest of the people were like soldiers, but this huge guy was basically the equivalent of a tank. He could go through a whole line of people and no one could stop him. He was the closest thing to a tank that they had back then. So think of it as Goliath tank. Anyways, this is what would happen. Each day, Goliath would come out and shout a challenge to the Israelite soldiers. He would say, now we'll do it in Goliath's voice as we should. Why are all of your soldiers lined up ready for battle? You are Saul's servants. I am a Philistine. So choose one man and send him to fight me. If that man kills me, he wins and we Philistines will become your slaves.
But if I kill your man, then I win and you will become our slaves. You will have to serve us. Right?
Goliath is a master of psychological warfare too. He's not just a great, powerful tank of a man. Sorry for Goliath's voice. But he attacks them with his voice first. And this goes on for 40 days, right? Over and over. He comes out and he shouts this across. It says they were on two sides of a valley. And he shouts this across at the Israelites saying, you send someone and I will kill them and you will be our slaves. Let's not all die. We want some slaves out of this. We could kill you if we wanted to. But I want to fight one-on-one and make you our slaves. He continues. The Philistine also said, today I stand and make fun of the army of Israel. I dare you to send me one of your men and let us fight. And Saul and the Israelite soldiers heard what Goliath said, and they were very afraid. This is what bullies do. This is almost exactly the things that bullies do. Look here, I'm listening. What does a bully do? They put you down, right? Bullies put people down. They make you feel small. They make you afraid. And they change your self-worth. And I think this is the key thing. This is what bullies are trying to do to you. They change your self-worth. What does it say here? You are Saul's servants. This is what Goliath said to those people. He said, you're Saul's servants. That's all you are. But this is what David realized. Go away. There it goes. This is what David realized. Because this is what David answered him. Click again. David said, I'm part of the army of the living God. Goliath said, you're Saul's servant. You're the servant of this guy. He's afraid of me. But David said, I'm part of the army of the living God. I'm not just Saul's servant. I'm part of God's army. I'm undefeatable. Even though he's here and Goliath's here. The fact is that David knew he was part of the army of the living God. His self-worth wasn't changed. All the rest of the people said, oh, we're just Saul's servants and we're going to die. David said, I'm not just Saul's servant. I'm part of the army of the living God. I'm undefeatable. Next page. How do we respond to that? Well, do what David did. David avoided Goliath. He didn't stay away from him completely, but he didn't get too close to him, right? David didn't go and shake hands with Goliath and then try to arm wrestle him, because he knew that was not his battle. He fought him with a sling from a far enough distance. So he avoided him. He stayed far enough away, but he did stand up to him, right? And that's what we're called to do, I think. We follow David's example. Bullies, you need to stand up to them. Don't get in their face all the time, but at a certain point you need to stand up to them. One of my favorite authors says, sometimes you need to step on a bully's toes until he apologizes to you. And that's what David did. He stood up to Goliath and said, no, I'm not going to put up with this. At the same time, we need to understand and forgive these people. When I think back to that kid when I was in junior high, middle school, the reason why that kid bullied me was because I was an easy target, but also because he failed twice. And he saw me in the same classes, 3 years younger than him. And he knew that I was smarter than him, and he knew that he was never going to be as smart as me. And he knew that he didn't have the opportunities. Deep down, he knew the truth about it, right? I later found out from some other guys in school that his parents had divorced, and he was one of those classic, back in the 70s when people divorced, they didn't just split apart. They fought and hated each other, and the fighting, and who knows what else he went through. And when we understand that bullying comes very often from people who've been bullied, we need to learn to understand and forgive them. That's what Jesus said. Jesus didn't say go slay your enemies. We do need to stand up for them, I think, like David. But we don't have to kill them all. We need to pray for our enemies. And remember, we're not Saul's servants. We need to go away, get our real fact here. We're part of the army of the living God. Right? When we're facing a bully, we're not just some guy's servant. We're part of God's army, and we're not just nobodies. Their description of us is wrong. We always can hold to the truth that we're part of God's army. Next page. In the end, right? David won. Bullies lose in the end, always. Because in the end, God makes it all better. But David won specifically right then and there, but it may take us a while before we win, but we will, because we're part of the army of the living God, and they're just someone's servant. Next page. I want to leave you with a couple things. You've seen this picture, right? You know this iconic picture? 25 years ago, outside Cannon Square, this guy, no one knows what his name is for sure by any stretch. They call him a tank man. I like this picture because here he is standing up to the tanks. But you know what? I like this next picture even better. Next one. See, here come the tanks. And there's no one standing in front of the way. Look over here. He decided to stand up to those tanks way before they got there. He saw them coming and he knew what he was going to do. He was going to stand up to them. He was going to stand up to the bullies who were coming to attack his people, right? And he did. And he changed the world, right? China's a different place 25 years ago. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it's changed radically from what it was in 1989. When you stand up to a bully with the strength of God's army behind you, you win. And I don't know if this guy's a Christian. No one does. There's a 1 in 18 chance that he was, but I don't know. But I know that when we stand up to bullies as part of the armies of the living God, we win in the end. So that's all I would say about bullies. Stand up to them with God's power behind you. Don't let them make you feel less than you are. You're not just Saul's servant. Frightened Saul hiding in his tent. No, you're part of the armies of the living God. Okay? One more thing. Don't be the bully yourself. At work, it's easy once you have power to be the person who's the bully. Don't be that person. Don't. If you do that, and you don't have the right to claim to be part of the armies of the living God. If you're the bully, you're Goliath. You're not David. And we know how it ends for Goliath. Right? Wouldn't you prefer to be the guy that God says, this is a man after my own heart? Or would you prefer to be a bully who gets his head cut off? You don't. No one wants that. We need to be not the bully. We need to be David's standing up to the bullies. Let's pray. I see my time is long now.